Do you ever take a look at your images and maybe you feel like there's something that they're still missing, even though they're technically pretty good? Maybe that little extra that perhaps you feel like it'll make it boost or just go up to that extra level that you want it to be. For the longest time, I've struggled a ton trying to find myself as a photographer or who I really want to be as an artist until I realized of these 5 things that are preventing me from being a better wedding photographer. Number 1, trying to over-focus too much on what camera equipment or what camera gear you're using. And listen, that does not go to say that I don't like using very nice equipment, because obviously it's more expensive and is out there for a reason. It definitely makes your job a lot easier. Like for instance, mirrorless cameras, the out of focus technology on these things are just, it literally just blew my mind when I first started using them, because I was just used to the old DSLR cameras and how slow they were. However, if you try to focus too much on those things, they wouldn't really make you a better photographer. It will just make you do things a little bit faster than you would otherwise. Think of that nice photographer that you look up to, which their images are just extremely, they blow your mind as to how nice they are. And I admire a lot of people myself, which it's great to do so. It's great to get references from other people and even see what type of gear they use. However, if you try to focus too much on the gear rather than the technique and the artistic vision that they're trying to head on and try to portray in every image that they make, you would be better off maybe spending that money on education as far as courses and things like that you can take. And then when you feel like you're ready and that you feel like you've overused or you already went above and beyond the abilities of your particular camera, then you can upgrade. One of the rules that I learned from graphic design, which is awesome, I'm so glad I learned this, is that less is more. When I first started out in photography, I always try to make sure I incorporated as many things as possible to make it be a compelling image, although I was adding so many different things that it ended up looking like a crowded thing that didn't really say anything. But just try to make sure that you focus on one thing at a time, and once you feel that that is already conquered, then you move on to the next thing, which is great because that segues perfectly to point number 2. Worrying about having way too much lighting on a wedding. And let me explain. One of the main focuses when you're shooting a wedding, at least in my opinion, it's about capturing moments rather than, obviously it has to look good, like your image obviously has to look amazing. However, the thing that calls in the most is emotion, which is when you're a wedding photographer, honestly, that's pretty much what you have to focus on the most. If you are not able to capture emotion on a wedding, it'll be pretty difficult and you'll have a really hard time trying to document things exactly as they happen. Once you feel like you've mastered that crucial aspect when it comes to wedding photography, and then you want to incorporate to your particular style, let's say any off-camera lighting and all of those things, then by all means do so. But trying to make sure, because think about it like this. If you are trying to capture, let's say, one little girl that's kind of running and making a beautiful expression, but then you just remember that your lighting is still not set properly for you to be able to capture that moment, you would basically be losing that moment just because of the fact that you were focused on other things rather than being present and being in the moment, which in weddings is like the number 1 thing that you really have to keep in mind. And that brings us to point number 3, which I actually even struggled myself for the longest time. And sometimes like the ego gets the best of me, which is stop trying to impress other photographers with your work, or at least stop making it the number 1 priority when it comes to shooting weddings and events. What that means is there's always a time and a place for you to be able to get those type of shots. I know that sometimes, even myself, I tend to get carried away when seeing just so many sick shots either on any social media that you're in, and you want to kind of incorporate it to your style, which is amazing. Like I've even done this myself a whole bunch of times. The thing is that when you're shooting very particular moments in which require for you to be present rather than focusing on, let's say, landscapes or architectures, on any of those things, it would take away from what's happening. That insane and that beautiful landscape shot that you got your bride and groom, as amazing as that picture is, they're not really going to be hanging that on their walls. They'll go for either a nice feeling and a nice smile that they had, or a nice portrait in which you can really see them both. That's why I also feel like if you are able to do so, start assisting other photographers before you even start taking gigs of your own. What that does is it'll allow you time to experiment, know yourself as a photographer, and that you can have a main photographer that they can go ahead and take like the most necessary things so the couple doesn't really miss anything, yet you can still give a little wiggle room or room for error for you to experiment and find yourself as a photographer and as an artist. And this brings us to point number 4, which is not building a relationship with your couples. I really feel like this has got to be like one of or the most important point that I have in this list. We have to keep in mind, a wedding is literally a one-of-a-kind moment that happens with the two couples. So just as the saying that they're not just one couple, you're just not their photographer. That's why I feel like it's extremely important for you to build a relationship with your clients. I kind of like to think that I do build a friendship with each and every single one of my couples. We have built this process in which pretty much we go back and forth with the couple every single time that there's any updates, and we try to let them know whether we're there for them, if there's absolutely anything that we can do to help them. Because you have to remember, they're not getting married every year, nor every month. So there's things that they can just not remember that because of your time and your expertise and years of experience, you've already seen before, so therefore you know how to act in certain situations. And your couples are literally trusting in you to make sure you get some beautiful images and you capture those timeless moments of their one-of-a-kind special time. Let them know that you are there for them and that you genuinely care, because that's how important it is for them. And it should be. When we first started out in our photography business, we even started giving pretty much engagement sessions for free, just solely on the fact it helps you in a couple of things. First, you would build a very nice portfolio. And secondly, you get to meet the couple even before their wedding day. So that way you don't meet them the very first time on the wedding. It's like, hey, I'm here, I just showed up. Rather than, you already build a relationship with them and you know exactly how they are in front of the lens, so you know how to talk to them and how you would go about interacting with them, which is super important. And finally, that brings us to point number 5, which is not being yourself. This is also one of the things that I personally struggled for the longest time. When I first started on photography, I first started assisting other big photographers at the time. And one of the things that I would notice is their way of approaching the wedding day. It would be with a lot of active and hyperactivity and super hyper when it comes to things and giving emotions, which is great because that definitely worked for them. However, me, myself, whether you want to believe it or not, I'm a very introverted person. So for me, that type of hyperactivity wouldn't really work, or it wouldn't really translate with all of my couples. It would feel forced or a bit fake, dare I say. Once I understood that I couldn't really keep up with trying to be on that pace the whole time, then I started finding myself as a person. I know how introverted I am, so this is how I would approach, which I'm also a very mellow person. So that's kind of the way I would go about shooting with my couples. I would go with that nice and soft mood. And at the end of the day, those are the type of images that I personally want to capture. Keep in mind that whatever works for that other person doesn't quite necessarily mean that it would work for you. So until you go ahead and find yourself like who you really are as a person and as an artist, then you can kind of develop within those things, and then you can enhance it and be better with time. I hope this video was useful for you. If you did, just hit the like. That kind of help your boy a little bit, which it'd be great. We usually post a lot of vlogging when it comes to our weddings, sessions, and things like this. So if you like this, make sure you subscribe as well. We really thank you so very much, and I'll catch you all next time.